Thank you. I was at a teaching and coaching summit about 4 years ago at the Orlando show, and there was a presenter there named Dr. Paul Shem. He's most known for being a professor at the University of Georgia and studies the leaders in different industries. And he's actually had a little bit of a interest in the golf instruction industry. When he was doing his presentation, he actually opened it up to the group for everyone to do a self-evaluation. Kind of everyone do a bit of a self-evaluation of what they thought their knowledge base was of the golf instruction, because everyone was golf instructors in the room. And he said on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being that you don't really know anything about golf and you don't know anything about how to teach it, and then 10 being that you knew everything that there was to know about golf instruction, how would you self-evaluate? I'm going to ask all of you to kind of have your own number. I'm not going to have you share it with anybody, but just have your own number in your own head. Well, at the time I was teaching probably for 11 or 12 years. I had some really great mentors that I had worked for. I had some great students that I thought were getting better, so I felt like I knew better than the average person, so I labeled myself around a 7. I felt like I needed to know a little bit more, but I knew more than the average player or average instructor. He then said, after doing his studies of people in their industry, usually people that were labeled mediocre or kind of middle of the road of their industry typically had a 7 or higher self-evaluation. So right away I realized I gave the wrong answer. And then he said that people that were considered the savants of their trade and really were considered kind of the smartest and most brilliant usually had a self-evaluation of a 3 or 4 or lower. And he then followed it up with a story about Bobby Bowden, who's a head football coach for the Florida State Seminoles, probably known as one of the best head football coaches of all time. And he was walking through an airport one time, and he was walking with his assistant coach, and he was stopped by assistant defensive coordinator for a high school football team. So not even a head coach, just not even the defensive coordinator, an assistant defensive coordinator, and stopped him to kind of tell him his theories on what he should be considering for the Florida State Seminoles on his defensive strategies. Bobby Bowden listened to every single word that this guy had to say. Was listening to him as if he was saying one of the most brilliant things ever. His assistant coach who was with him was kind of puzzled by this. But they kind of continued on with the conversation. About 5 minutes later, they ended the conversation, they parted ways, and they started walking again. The assistant coach turned to Bobby Bowden afterwards and said, Why did you give this guy the time of day? You're Bobby Bowden, the head coach of one of the most successful college football teams of all time. And then you're giving an assistant defensive coordinator of a high school team all this attention. And he takes out his finger and points it right in his assistant coach's face, and he said, you never know when you're going to get your next great idea. So my hope is that after my presentation today, I can give you 1 or 2 ideas that might help you in your own coaching careers and coaching pathways. So before I go on, I want to just take a moment to thank Scott Archer for putting on this event. I'm from the Southwest Section PGA, and I'm actually the chair of our own teaching and coaching summit, and I know what it takes to put all the nuts and bolts together to put on such an event like this. So I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to Scott Archer. I also wanted to take a moment to thank Thomas Hutton, the executive director. He's the one who actually invited me to be a speaker today. But I also, most importantly, want to thank the Southern Texas PGA, because this is my first time to Houston and my first time to Southern Texas. And it's one thing to stand in front of your students every day when you're clearly the expert on the tee, but to stand up in front of your peers is obviously always a nerve-wracking experience. So I appreciate the opportunity for me to share my story, and hopefully it'll help you along the way. I wanted to mention today too that everything that I'm speaking about today is not the way to do it. I don't think it's like what everyone should be doing. It's just the way that I do it, and it's the way that I've learned through most of my mentors, and also just through trial and error. So like I said, I hope something that I say can help you. Just a little bit of an intro on my journey thus far. I'm actually a byproduct of the PGA Golf Management Program. I'm a graduate of the Methodist University. Are there any other PGM or PGA Golf Management graduates here? Awesome. So for those of you that do or don't know about the PGA Golf Management Program, we do kind of an internship every single year, or every single summer, either a 3 or 6 month internship. And after my first 2 internships, I realized that I wanted to get into teaching, and that was really what I wanted to focus on the most. So my 3rd internship, I worked for a top 50 teacher named Michael Hebron in Smithtown Landing in Long Island, New York. He's a top 50 teacher, most notably known for kind of studying how the brain learns and how a student learns most effectively in a learning environment, and trying to create an environment that allows the students to learn the best. He actually hates the word teacher. He always loves the word coach, and he thinks he's a coach of his students. And I worked for him in the summer of 2008 for him for about 3 months, and I still consider him one of my biggest mentors, who kind of paved the way for how I coach the game today. My last internship, and who I ended up staying on working for 6 years, was a golf teacher by the name of Jim McLean. I worked for him at his flagship school in Doral, Miami, Florida, and I was with him for about 1.5 years there before he transferred me to his school out in Southern California in Palm Springs called the La Quinta Resort and Club, and I ran a school for him there just for 1 season. After that, he moved me to Arizona, which is what brought me to Arizona originally, and I opened up and ran a golf school for him there for 3.5 years. And I probably credit him the most for kind of getting my start in the teaching world and allowing me to really develop my skills as a presenter and also as a teacher. And after working for him for 3.5 years, that's when I joined Paradise Valley Country Club, which I'm still at. I'm going into my 9th season at Paradise Valley Country Club. And about 1.5 years after working for PV, I got my director of instruction job at Forest Highlands, which is just 2 hours north of Phoenix. So I spend my winter months down in Phoenix area of Arizona, and then I drive 2 hours north up into the mountains of Flagstaff and spend my 4 months there. It's a pretty lucky gig. I get to just be a snowbird as a profession, and my 2 clubs are only 2 hours apart, so it's a pretty cool gig. So that's just a little bit about me. If none of you have met me before, but I have 3 pillars of information that I wanted to share with you today. The 3 pillars that I wanted to talk about first is how I market and how I promote, and just some stories and some ideas that I utilize to promote myself and market myself. The second pillar that I'm going to talk about is just how I do one-on-one instruction, some of the things that I do for private instruction, and then the last pillar I'm going to talk about is just group instruction and some of the ideas that I've done with group instruction. So the first one starts off talking about marketing. Starts off with a story with me starting at the La Quinta Resort and Club. I was the director of instruction for his school when I moved out to California. And for Jim McLean, his flagship school is in Miami. That's where he spends the majority of his time. But he goes to visit other schools maybe once or twice a year, so he doesn't come out very often. And I had just gotten started at La Quinta. I was 23 at the time, and just very eager to try to do a good job. And I was in charge of the accounting of the school, the marketing of the school, the overall operations of the school. Jim McLean was coming to town, and he was going to be coming to meet with me about the school, and I was nervous but also eager to tell him how everything has been going. So he drives up to the school and he comes into the office and he sits down with me and he's saying, and I have all my numbers ready to go over with him, and his first question to me was, how are the free hotel clinics going? So at each school that we have, we offer free hotel clinics to the guests of the hotel to try to promote the school and then also to help develop the presentation skills of an instructor. And I had to say to him, I said, Jim, we haven't been getting a lot of people at the free clinics, maybe 1 or 2. It just hasn't been well attended. He said, well, why not? Why aren't people coming to the clinic? What are you doing to promote it? I said, well, Jim, I created this nice flyer. I have a flyer here saying free clinic, on Wednesdays from 3 to 4. I went up to the hotel, gave it to the concierge, gave it to the front desk, asked them to give it out to every guest that checks in. I even had the flyer built up and blown up onto a decal that I could like post it up onto the range as a sign so that people on the public range would walk by it and know about our clinic. And at this particular range, there was no back side of the range. So the school was on the far left side of the range, and the public warmed up on the right. So everybody passed by the sign, but still only 1 to 2 people were coming by the school. He turned to me and said, if your life depended on it, what would you do to get people to come to the clinic? I said, man, my life depended on it. And I was thinking, and I was really struggling to find the answer. And the door was open to our office, and we could see the public range. So I look up at the public range, and then I look back at him, and I can kind of see what he's trying to tell me. And I said, well, I guess I should be walking the range more, right? I should go walk the range and promote the clinic that way. I think that's a good idea, Jim. I'll start doing that going forward. He said, I don't want you to do it going forward. I want you to do it right now. And I'm going to sit here, I'm going to watch you do it. So I guess that was the end of our meeting. Just talking about how to promote the free clinic. So I went out, walked the range, and did it for about 45 to 60 minutes. When I came back, Jim was gone. And I guess that's all he wanted to talk to me about. And that evening was actually the free clinic, and I had 8 to 9 people come to my clinic that evening. Very similar to actually, to be fair, what Scott did to try to promote this event. Had somebody call out and actually individually talk to each person to try to promote the event. So I would, later on that evening, I got a call from Jim, and Jim called me up. He said, hey, how many people did you get to the clinic? I said, I had 8 or 9 people come to my clinic. He said, oh my God, that's awesome. Way to go, Justin. He said, do you know what my mentor, Jackie Burke Jr., because Jackie Burke Jr. was a big mentor of Jim McClain's. He said, do you know what Jackie Burke used to tell me that pro stood for in golf pro? I said, I don't know, I thought it stood for professional. He said, no, it stands for promoter. Us as golf professionals are golf promoters, so we should be out there promoting the game of golf. Later on, when I started my school, when I opened up the school at Arizona, I had a teacher that worked for me there who was just not very busy, wasn't getting very many lessons. And I had told this teacher multiple times to go walk the range, because I thought it was the best way to promote. And they just didn't feel like doing it. They thought it was too salesy. They didn't want to be a car salesman or anything like that. Well, eventually they were in my office and just still once again complaining about not being busy. I just said, just do me a favor and just go walk the range for 15 minutes. Just go walk the range. So she walked the range, and she went and introduced herself to other people on the range. She came back actually 30 minutes later and had booked two series of 5 lessons within 30 minutes of just walking the range. And I'm not saying every time that you go meet somebody, this is an opportunity for you to sell, but it's an opportunity for you to kind of introduce yourself. You're the professional, you're the expert on the range. And I think it means a lot to a golfer when a pro comes up and introduces themselves and just says, hey, is there anything I can do to help you with your game? And if they say no, then you just move on, you go talk to the next person. But it was a great lesson that I had learned about marketing. When I started at Paradise Valley Country Club in Forest Highlands, I knew that this was obviously a great way to get my membership to know who I was, so I walked the range quite a bit. But about after a year of working there and people had known who I was, I knew that giving out a tip to people on the range is a fantastic way to promote yourself. Well, in the year of 2018, I thought to myself, well, the nice thing about being at a private club is you have the email addresses of all the members, and I had already built up kind of a database of emails of people who had just worked for me, or who had worked with me. So I decided, well, instead of walking the range, what if I filmed myself doing a golf tip? And I just filmed doing, and at the time I used to upload it to Instagram and YouTube at the same time. I uploaded it to Instagram, and at the time, Instagram I think only allowed it to be 30 seconds or shorter. So I had to get my tip out like super quick and say something to help somebody's game in 30 seconds. I started to do this on a weekly basis, and I used to email it out to my membership, and I called it Tip Tuesdays. And I just emailed it out once a week, every single week to send it to my members. And it started to become a really popular thing. A lot of people really enjoyed it. Now, when I'm giving other people this this suggestion to get in front of a camera and do maybe weekly golf tips, a lot of people are nervous to get in front of a camera. They're, oh, I don't want to sound bad, or I don't know what to say, or you know, I think it seems weird to upload my video up online. Well, here's I've been doing Instagram now for about five or 6 years, and here's the funny thing is that when you upload your first video to Instagram or YouTube, it gets about 10 views. Nobody watches it. So I mean, it gives you a couple of reps to kind of get it out there and just get comfortable in front of the camera and get your script down on kind of how you would do a tip. But what was great about this is that it was a way for me to kind of, if the members weren't currently taking lessons from me, at least they were hearing from me at least once a week, something that could help them. Now what that also added to as well is that I used to email it to them, and that's why I also uploaded it to YouTube, because a lot of my membership is older. I don't think they even have Instagram. So I put it on YouTube as well. That way I could just YouTube the link to I email them the link so they could just click it and watch it. Well, one thing about this Tip Tuesday was that every time that I emailed their inboxes, it was me giving them value, right? I'm giving you value. Here's a tip. Hope it helps your game. I'm not looking for you to sign up for me for anything. Well, what that I opened up the opportunity for is that when I did have an opportunity to promote a program that I had going on or promote a golf school that I was trying to get going, because they had seen my emails not as spam, because I think that's what a lot of our client base sees sometimes a lot of our emails if we're only just promoting programs that we have going on, is that they just see it as spam. Oh, here's Justin coming along wanting me to give him more money to sign up for another program. But if you're consistently always giving out content and always giving out free advice, just little tips here and there, they're more likely to want to open up that email that eventually comes across their inbox and more likely to want to open up for the program. So I thought that was a good tip. If any of you are currently filming tips and doing that already, awesome. If not, I'd give it a shot. I think it's a great way to add value to your clubs and to your student base. The last thing that I do for marketing, and this is a more recent one, is that I've been experimenting with a group class that's a little bit more of a higher ticket item. It's something that I'm asking the members to pay a higher ticket price level for, more closer to $1,000 to $1,500 to sign up for this particular program. And the way that I just recently have been marketing it, and I filled my program coming up here in November and December, that's the program I was currently trying to market, was that I sent out an email saying, hey, I have this amazing program that I'm super excited about, but I didn't put any price or any details in it in the email. I just said, if you're interested in this style of coaching, and I kind of talked a little bit about the style of coaching in the email, shoot me an email back and we'll jump on a Zoom call. Not on a phone call, but a Zoom call. And when I jumped on the Zoom call with them, I kind of explained to them how excited I was about the upcoming program that I was going to be running, how it could benefit their game. And I didn't mention the price until the very, very end. And I really utilized the Zoom as an opportunity to really, sell I think sounds bad, but that is what we do at the end of the day. We are promoting and trying to sell programs that we're trying to offer to our members and to our students. But if you get that opportunity to have a face-to-face, or just do it in person, if you see them around the club, to have them sit down and just have a 15-minute conversation with, it gives you an opportunity to really try to sell that more higher ticket item that's not like, hey, sign up for my $100 golf school. Those are easier to promote via email, but if it's more going out into the thousands, I've had some success utilizing Zoom. Private one-on-one lessons. I would assume, how many in this room teach primarily all the time? That's their main source of work. Most of them. Okay, great. I would assume, how many of you do spend the majority of your time with one-on-one lessons? Majority of the room. Okay, great. So I'm just going to give you a little bit about how I do one-on-one lessons. I'm not, like I said at the beginning, I don't think this is the way. It's just ways that it has helped me. The first one was the 3-step process that I learned from Jim McLean. This was a 3-step process that He taught it's extremely elementary. However, it gives you a script on what to cover, and then also if you're one that uses video or voiceover or anything like that, it gives you kind of a way to recap your lesson in the voiceover. If you're not one that does that, but wants to do a recap of your lesson just in person or via notes or anything like that, once again, this three-step process, I think, is just brilliant, but also very, very elementary. First step, we want to identify what they're doing right now. So when the student comes to our lesson tee, we want to identify what they're doing at the current moment. A lot of times, a lot of students don't know what they're actually doing. I utilize video a lot, especially if it's my first lesson with them. At Paradise Valley Country Club, we're very fortunate to have a golf learning center. So we have a big learning center where I use Swing Catalyst video software, and we also have the pressure plates. At Forest Highlands, we don't have that golf learning center, so I utilize an iPad, and I use Coach Now, which is a fantastic program if any of you are looking for that type of a technology to be utilizing. But the video allows me to show them what they're doing right now. So even though they feel like they're swinging what they think is correct, they don't really know what's going on. So let's just say we have somebody at the top of the swing and they're coming extremely over the top. They don't know that they're coming over the top very much, but having the video allows us to be able to identify that. So at the beginning of the lesson, I say, this is what you're doing right now, is that golf club's coming way above the right shoulder, and you're kind of swiping across it, just for example purposes. The second step is to then identify what they want to be doing instead. So what are they doing right now, and then what do you want to do instead? What you want to do instead is basically showing them maybe a pro example of somebody who allows that golf club to come a little bit more down on plane, more underneath the right shoulder, or you could just demonstrate it to them and just kind of show them what you would do is just allowing that club to come a little bit more under the right shoulder. The third step is just how to make that change. And you can make that change in a couple of different ways. You can either explain to them the change that they're trying to make. You could show them just basically how I showed them right there with a visual cue. You could give them a kinesthetic feel. A kinesthetic feel would be actually trying to place them into the position. Or if any of you have done any studies with John Dunnigan or Will Wu, they would actually say try to push them away from where you actually want them to go. So what that means is basically as you get up to the top of the swing, as they're coming down, you would actually try to push the club over the top for them so that they have to fight that force to try to actually train their muscles to feel what it actually feels to drop the club under, which I think is sometimes some really brilliant stuff. I had John Dunnigan out to our teaching and coaching summit, and he said, here, stick out your arm just for a second. So I did. And he said, okay, watch this. I just turned your hand. Did you learn anything from me doing that? I said, well, I guess the answer is no, but it's true. If he just turns my hand, I didn't really do anything different. I just felt him move my hand. He said, now stick it out again. Now I'm going to push it in the opposite direction, and you need to fight to turn the hand the way that we're trying to get you to turn the hand. And now that I'm fighting against his force, I'm now feeling the muscles that I have to engage to do that. So I thought that was a good nugget that I learned from John Dunnigan about giving the opposite force of what you want so that they have to actually feel where they need to put it. And then finally, the last way you can kind of teach somebody to change from instead to how is just giving them some type of a drill. So for this particular problem, you might give them the figure 8 drill, which I'm sure most of you have seen, which is like kind of drawing a little figure 8 on the ground with some golf balls or something like that, and having them feel that figure 8 swing to get them to feel that club going on the inside. Now what's great about this 3-step process is, like I said before, it gives you this script of how to summarize the lesson, and if you do voiceovers, it scripts out the voiceover just perfectly. Here's what you're doing at the beginning of the lesson. Here's where you are now. It's very important to get the after video. It's so funny, when I did the Jim McLean School, this is really the script that we just brought to every single school, is just showing them the before and after. When they see that before and after, they think they're the best golf coach in the entire world, and it's just like, oh my God, this is money well spent once they can see that before and after. So if you've been an anti-video person, I think, and to be honest, most of the time I don't use video in my lessons, but if it's my first lesson, I have to give a great first impression with this particular student. video really just shows the byproduct of what they accomplished in the lesson that they were with you. That before and after video is really great. And then making sure that they knew how they got from that before and after is really important. This next story starts off in the morning. I have a full book of lessons. I have an 8 o'clock lesson in the morning, and this student comes up to my lesson tee, and he's just slicing the ball like crazy, just super big slice. I look at his grip, and his grip's super weak. Left hand is rotated towards the target, right hand also rotated towards the target. Just an incredibly weak grip. And just slicing the ball. I'm like, all right, perfect. I'm just gonna go in and change his grip. So I get his left hand much more on top, get his grip a lot more on top, right hand a little bit more underneath, stronger grip. Starts piping, just perfect. Boom, 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 boom. He's like, oh my God, this is the best lesson I've ever had. I've never been told about the grip. This is unbelievable. You are a genius. I'm like, well, thanks. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. All right, great. 9 o'clock lesson comes along, almost the exact same player. Obviously not a different player, but same exact problem. Super weak grip, big slices to the right. I get in there, I'm licking my chops. This is gonna be an easy day. And change that grip on there nice and strong. Get that right hand underneath. He replies, ah, this feels so weird. He's like, are you sure? Oh, man, this just doesn't feel right. So because it doesn't feel right, and he hates the feeling of it, he comes in and he squeezes super hard, and he actually slices the ball even more to the right than he did before. And he's like, are you sure you know what you're talking about? I mean, like, I don't, this can't be right. How long have you been teaching? And I just said, like, trust me, the last guy loved it. I promise you, just get that grip over there. You're gonna just absolutely love it. So what this story is supposed to help you with, and I'm pretty sure most of you, since you teach a lot, you have to have multiple ways to be able to change the same thing. I think it's also a good way to have multiple ways to change the same thing, because I want to pull the room here too. How many here are at private golf clubs? Okay, about a pretty good amount of you. I'm at a private golf club at both of my clubs, and one thing, especially now going into my 9th season at Paradise Valley, is that it's hard not to get typecasted. And what I mean by typecasted is like, oh yeah, this is the guy that changes grips, and this is what he does. So having multiple ways to change a thing, just to change a problem, will help you not only help different people that might need different solutions to those things, but also prevent you from getting typecasted as like, oh yeah, this is the grip guy. This is the guy that changes grips. Oh, I bet I know what he did with you. Did he change your grip? Yep, that's what he did to me. So having multiple ways to change the same thing, I think, is super important. Now I'm going to go through a big laundry list of ways that I've learned to change the club face, and I'm still learning new ways. And the last one that I did, I just learned at the last teaching and coaching summit. I'm just going to go through a couple of them of how I would change the club face if I had somebody who was slicing a lot. I'm a big fan of it, getting the face more closed if someone's a slicer. But here's my first one. And this is one we did at the McLean School all the time. It's just close the face 45 degrees. So actually I close the face 45 degrees and then have them still grip the club very weak. So that way they don't think that they've changed their grip at all. It's still a very weak grip, but the face is closed 45 degrees. But the cool thing about this is that it's a secret way of actually strengthening the grip. You gotta make sure it's 45 degrees first, and they change it before gripping the club, and then get them to come in with their weak grip. But what's great about this is that it feels like a weak grip, it just looks 45 degrees closed. But if I were to turn this face square, it's actually a stronger grip. It's actually, I'm strengthening their grip, but their feel is that it feels like I didn't touch their grip at all. So if I got somebody who's like, don't touch my grip, it feels really weird, well then I just shut the face really quick, go about 45 degrees. And I always introduce it as a drill. I always say, I just want to do a drill. This is not a permanent change. I just want to do a drill with you just to see what would happen. That way that they're a little bit more open to actually closing the face significantly because they think it's just a drill. 9 times out of 10, they end up hitting the ball a lot better, a lot straighter. And they're like, You're like, I don't know if I can play with this close to a 45-degree face. You know, people are going to make fun of me. I say, well, do you want this to look weird and that to look great? Or do you want this to look great and that to look weird? And they usually say, well, I agree with you. I'll look weird down here. So, and most of the time they actually don't even get it to as close as you want them to. You know, I'm asking 45. They like close it like a couple of degrees. They never really go to the extent that they really want to. Another way to change the club face that I've had success with is where they take the club back in the backswing. A lot of times slicers really roll that face open, get that face pointing up, knuckles up towards the sky. Getting that face to feel like it's really down halfway back is a fantastic place to kind of close that face, and I've had some success of just having people focus on that. Getting them to close the face at the top of the swing. Getting that left wrist to be a little bit more flexed or bowed at the top of the swing, or more focusing on the right wrist, getting the right wrist a little bit more bent at the top of the swing can kind of help get that club face a little bit more closed. An idea on the downswing, which is something that I learned through Jim McLean's material, but it was about Mickey Wright. Mickey Wright's a famous LPGA Tour player, and one thing that I thought was notable about her was that Ben Hogan, who I think we would all agree has probably one of the best golf swings of all time, and most people would idolize him as having one of the best golf swings. Well, he idolized Mickey Wright as having one of the best golf swings of all time. And Mickey Wright used to utilize the idea of using her last 3 fingers at the top of her swing to curl down to try to close the face that way. So that idea can kind of help people try to close that club face. On the halfway down position, I've had some success of telling people to try to use the face of the club to kind of hammer down a nail. And if they can get that face to hammer down a nail, they can get that face to be closed. I've had people utilize an idea of having a washcloth in their hand. And if they were to hold a washcloth and then at impact they had to wipe a table, and then on the through swing they had a high five the target, that's a great way to kind of teach the face to be closed. I've had people utilize the idea of getting the toe to beat the heel coming into the golf ball. So if my golf ball's down on the ground here, I want to see if I can get the toe to win the race to the golf ball. I'm not saying to hit on the toe, still assuming we're hitting in the middle of the face, but I'm trying to get them to get the toe to win the race to the ball instead of getting the heel to win the race to the ball. That's an external cue. Once again, another thing that Dr. Will Wu and John Dunnigan would love, having more external cues, meaning talking more about what the golf club is doing, not talking about body parts and what it needs to do to kind of create that. So getting that toe to win the race, fantastic way to get that club face closed. Famous golf instructor and also famous golf player named Bobby Cole, a South African player. I taught with him in Doral. He used to utilize the idea, grip tight, look right, because that's where the ball is going to go. So grip tight, look right. I've used that idea with some students. Using that same idea with grip pressure, I've actually had some success of telling people to change up their grip pressure, having the left hand being a little bit looser than the right hand. Right hand a little bit firmer, left hand looser. I call it lefty loosey, righty tighty, like the same rules of a screwdriver. But the left hand loose, right hand tight, that allows that club face to turn over. I had a teacher come out to the Teaching and Coaching Summit this last April, and he was telling people to kind of feel like they're going to hit into a wall and then have their hand rotate up the wall. And he actually had somebody, he had them go up against a wall and actually feel their hand roll up against the wall as if they were going to keep their hand up against the wall. So you could kind of get somebody to go here and then just kind of rehearse getting that left hand to be up against the wall, and that's a great way to close the face. And I'm pretty sure if we polled the whole room and just and brainstormed here, we'd probably have about 20 to 30 more ideas on how to close a club face. But I think it's good to have those nuggets of knowledge and those ideas that you can jump into, because you never know which student's going to come in front of you, and you never know which idea is going to just click with them, where they think you're the best instructor in the world, or the idea that you're going to tell them and they're going to think you have no idea what you're talking about. So. Three things that I think most people want out of a golf lesson. I'm talking particularly full swings, better contact, hitting the ball straighter, and then hitting the ball farther. And I think the priority level goes in that list of priority. So if they're not hitting the ball very solid, I think that should be the main focus of your full swing lesson. We want to make sure that they're making good solid contact. If they're already making fairly good solid contact, then you can focus on making them hit the ball straighter. And then if they're already hitting the ball solid and hitting the ball straight, then you can kind of focus in on power. I want to just touch briefly on how I kind of teach all of those. If somebody's hitting bad contact, the first one that we sometimes a lot of times see is thin shots, people that are hitting the ball thin. Sometimes that they come in and their arms are kind of pulling up, their body's pulling up. I've even seen people sometimes squeeze the club too tight. If you notice here, actually I'll probably use a regular club, and I don't know if everyone can see this on the ground here. Actually, I'll put it up on this table here. So if I got the club on the table here, and I just go ahead and grip the club at a scale of 1 to 10, right around a 4. And I've shown this to students too, just to show them the control of what grip pressure can do. But here's the club on the ground at a 4. And then if I just jump to an 8 or a 9, here's a 4, here's an 8 or a 9. It just raises the club just slightly. So here's a 4, here's an 8 or a 9. And I kind of show that example to students because even if you keep your head down, even if you keep your arms straight, that grip pressure can kind of sometimes pull up on that golf club and get that golf club to come up into the air. But at the end of the day, what I think the real root cause of why people hit the ball thin is because they're afraid of fat. They're afraid of hitting the ground too hard or too much. Anytime that somebody hits the ground fat and hit the ground behind the golf ball, most of the time their self-diagnosis is usually, oh, I hit too much ground. That's what they always say, oh, I hit too much ground. Well, if we're telling ourselves we've hit too much ground, what's the solution to that? Well, that's to hit less ground. So that's usually pulling up on the club, pulling up on our body. That helps us not hit the ground too hard. But in reality, we just didn't get the low point enough forward. So we didn't get that pressure to be enough into our left side. So that now leads into hitting the ball fat. Why does somebody hit the ball fat? Generally speaking, I find it's because we don't get that pressure into our left side. So we get too much pressure on the right foot. So when somebody comes in and they try to hit the golf ball, they're kind of being stuck on that right side. So some ideas that I've helped people trying to get that weight to get into that left foot is to bump the car door closed. What do I mean by that? Is when we get the golf club up to the top of the swing, we pretend like we got groceries in our hand. We got to shut that car door. And that's kind of an idea that I've used with some students, trying to get them to feel like they shut the car door closed, and that gets their weight over into that left side so that they can get that divot out in front of the ball. The second way that I sometimes have had some success is that sometimes, as most of you know, we don't teach the most talented people in the world, especially if you're more teaching beginner to intermediate players, and they don't have the coordination to be able to shut a car door and swing the golf club through. So I've had some success of stack and tilting them and just getting them to just keep their weight on the left side the entire time. So getting them to feel almost like they keep their pressure more on that left side. That way they don't have to think about having to shut the car door and getting their weight over to the left. Now, this might be obvious to a lot of you today, but it was a big aha moment this summer, and it's something that I've been coaching a lot this summer with a lot of success. And I think all the problems that I just talked about there usually comes down to a beginner or an intermediate golfer trying to get the golf ball in the air. So they think that it's their job to get the golf ball in the air. And if you think about all the symptoms that I've talked about so far, like bending our arms, lifting our body, or even getting our weight into the back foot, all of that stuff seems logical to help a ball go into the air. If I had to pick up a ball and try to lift it into the air, I would do all the things that most beginner to intermediate golfers would do. But once I've explained to them that their job's not to hit the golf ball in the air, that the golf club alone is very much designed to hit the ball in the air, and it's already engineered to do that, and their job is only to just swing back and through and hit the ground, and just have them brush the grass. And I just have them do some practice swings doing that. Whenever I film them just doing that, don't think about hitting a ball in the air. Just try to brush the grass where the ball is. And I filmed them doing that. They don't do any of the things that they were doing when the ball was there. So they don't pull up, they don't lift up, they don't sink back into their back foot because they're just focusing on brushing the grass. And I've had ladies in my clinic, and I've coached them this all through the summer, and towards the end, at one of our last clinics of the season, we were talking about hitting fairway woods. And if you've taught beginner ladies that are not the most athletic, talented people in the world. Hitting a fairway wood off the ground is incredibly difficult. But just coaching and really reaming this idea into their head through the entire summer, we're hitting almost consistent fairway woods up into the air, just thinking of the idea that my job's not to hit the ball in the air, my job's just to brush the grass right where the ball is. Although very simple, I think it is a very, very effective way to hit the ball. One other idea that I wanted to share with you is centeredness of contact. Centeredness of contact whenever I have somebody who's hitting the ball too much on the heel or too much on the toe. I'm a big fan of the 2-ball drill. The 2-ball drill. And the 2-ball drill is basically this. You put 3 balls in a row, you take out the middle ball. If they're one that's always hitting the ball on the heel, you have them hit the inside golf ball. If they reach out to the heel, then they hit both golf balls. So if they are just learning to hit just the inside ball without hitting the outside ball, it allows them to not reach out so much. I love this drill too because it's very much self-discovery. I think this would be something that Michael Hebron, I've never seen him actually use this particular drill, but I think it'd be right up his alley because it's a drill that makes them have to discover what the answer is. So a lot of times they would, they would come in to hit the golf ball and they're hitting, the outside ball, and this was the funny answer that he always had for this, was that he said, well, the student would be like, well, how do I miss the outside golf ball? And he would always say, IDC. He's like, I don't care. You can do whatever you want. You just can't hit that outside ball. But he was a big fan of not giving how-to instruction, but giving environments where people would have to learn. So the 2-ball drill, if somebody's hitting the ball too much on the heel, I think it's fantastic. The 2-ball drill, if somebody's hitting on the toe, you would hit the outside ball. But because the hossel's so big, I usually give them a little bit, maybe a ball and a half of room there, because I think sometimes having too close makes it almost impossible if they're hitting the ball on the toe. But you want it to be relatively close so that it does make them uncomfortable and it has to make them swing in a different area. So that's the centeredness of contact drill that I've always liked when someone's making full contact. Directional control. Okay, so somebody's hitting the ball relatively good, but they're hitting poor direction. I want to quote 3 people in this particular section. The first person I want to quote is my mentor, Jim McLean. He always used to utilize the idea of fix the face first. Fix the face first. So people, when we see people slicing, the big obvious thing is we see a big over the top, big outside in swing. And a lot of times I think us as instructors are most attached to trying to change that path as quickly as we can. But he always was a big believer in fixing the face first. The second guy that I want to quote is Claude Harmon, Butch Harmon's father, most notably known for being the head professional at Winged Foot and winning the Masters in 1948. He used to utilize, he used to say that amateurs don't get enough credit. They don't get enough credit for what they do. They usually, we see a slicer come up to the top and they come over the top. He's like, well, of course they should. Why? If you have an open club face and you're coming from the inside, you're going to hit a block slice to the right. And every one of us in the room who are all professional golfers, if we were to hit a fade, we would have the face open and we would all swing outside in. Now, hopefully, I think most of us are doing it on purpose. Our amateur golfers are doing it on accident. But that's, we don't give amateurs enough credit. And it's almost something you could say to your students, like, good on you, way to come over the top. That's what you should be doing if you got an open face. But the third person that I wanted to quote on this was a guy named Bruce Furman, who I worked with at the La Quinta Resort and Club. He's also known as the Director of Instruction at Langdon Farms in Oregon. And he used to say, you want to take the reward away. And this is why I think it connected back to why McLean said fix the face first. Is that he said, you want to take the reward away. And what do you mean by that? Is that if the face is open and you come over the top, you're rewarded with a ball that starts down the left side and then fades back to the right. Well, if you get that face to close in any of the laundry list of items that I used earlier, and you get them to still cut, and they're still coming over the top with a closed face, Now they're hitting this big duck hook to the left. You've now taken the reward away. By them coming over the top, they're not rewarded with the ball that goes down the middle. They're now awarded a big duck hook to the left. And once again, when I introduce this to my students, a lot of times I warn them. I say, hey, when we close this space, we're looking for duck hooks to the left. So don't be alarmed when you hit these big duck hooks to the left. This is what we want. This is just chapter 1. We're going to fix the path a little bit later. But once we can get that club base closed and we can get that ball curving left relatively consistently, the student has a lot more of a motivation and an inspiration to want to swing more to the right, because now the ball is going to go left, and now they can swing out to the right as much as they can to kind of get the ball to start right and then curve back to the left. Okay? More distance, more power. So if somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I just want to hit the ball farther. With my work with launch monitors like Foresight, I have definitely realized when I've turned somebody from a slicer, who's usually just opening the face and cutting across the lot, they're basically just hitting big flop shots. When I've turned them from a slicer to a drawer of the golf ball, we get sometimes up to 30 to 40 yards further. So if they say, hey, I want to hit the ball farther, I'm hoping and praying that they're slicing, because it'll be an easy fix, because I can just get them to draw the golf ball and they'll hit the ball farther. But if they're already hitting a relative a draw, most of the time they usually want distance with their driver. So I, once again, work with, especially down at Paradise Valley Country Club, I work with a launch monitor like Foresight, where we actually work on trying to hit the ball up. The studies with the launch monitors is definitely a more upward angled attack. Helps people get the ball to go a lot farther. So I get them to focus on that number and really just try to get their head to stay back so that we can launch the ball higher. At Forest Highlands, where I don't have the launch monitor, we actually have a tree on the range that just so happens to be right around the trajectory of where we want the drive to be. So I always say I want that ball to go above that tree, or if you have a mountain range in the back, in the distance, I don't know, there's not many mountains here in Texas, right? So it's not a very good example. But yeah, if you could use a tree in the distance or something like that, that can kind of give you this idea of hitting the ball up higher. It's definitely a way that I've used to get people to hit the ball with a little bit more power. Hands and arms was an idea that I've used for a lot of students with a lot of success, of just having them stand with their feet together and just feeling what we would consider a hands and arms dominant swing. I've had a lot of success with particularly beginner and intermediate players of getting more speed in their swing there. I always kind of give them the example here is that if you were to put the club underneath your armpit, and this is typically what I see on the range of more beginner to intermediate players, is when they're taking the club up to the top, they're usually really whipping their whole body through, thinking that their bigger muscles is the key to power. But when I've shown them that, you know, if I put the club underneath my armpit and try to create a little whip sound here, you can kind of hear it. Or if I put it in my hand, it quadruples the speed right away. It kind of is an aha moment for them, and if I just put them in this feet together drill and just having them just doing little hands and arms swings, a lot of times the ball goes even farther than they were doing it before, because it just calms down their body and allows their hands and arms to hit the ball. Very much an Ernest Jones or Ernie De La Torre, Manuel De La Torre. I knew that was wrong. If you've never read any of their books, they're very much hands and arms types coaches. Jim Flick was another hands and arms coach. So great opportunities to get people to hit the ball a little bit harder, getting them to use a more hands and arms dominant approach. For a more advanced player, and I've learned a little bit about this through having swing catalysts at our Paradise Valley Country Club. We use a horse plate, and they talk a lot about, like I said, this is much more for the advanced golfer, but there's 3 different ways to utilize your body to create more power. And if you haven't done the swing catalyst certifications, I highly recommend doing it. I believe level 1's free, and the second level is like $27. It's really cheap. And even if you don't have a swing catalyst, having the information from these certifications, I think is really, really helpful. But basically, they say that the one way that we want to create power is first through the lateral motion, side-to-side motion. So getting someone to feel like they're kind of getting that side-to-side motion, that shutting of the car door idea that I talked about earlier. That would be a great way to kind of create a little bit more power. And the swing catalyst actually can measure how hard you're actually creating that force. The second in sequence is what we want that maximum side-to-side power to be from when that left arm's at about 10 o'clock. When that left arm gets to about parallel to the ground, that's when we want to be twerking at our highest amount of power. And then when that golf club gets to about parallel to the ground, that's when we're maximizing the vertical force. So it goes horizontal force, then torque, and then vertical. And if you haven't looked into Mike Adams and Terry Roll's stuff, they have a great measuring system on how to actually measure your student and determine whether they are a glider, which would be somebody who should be more focusing on that side-to-side power, or if they are a spinner, or who is somebody who should be focusing more on the rotation of their body, or if they are a launcher, who is somebody that should be more jumping off the ground. Great source of information of being able to measure your students and being able to identify which of those ideas should be used for power. But once again, I would use that more only with advanced players. I've tried it with beginner and intermediate players, and it's a no-go. Don't get too down the road with that idea. When I worked for Michael Hebron, when I went to go watch him coach, this is a cool story. This was my first summer. I still consider the summer 2008 was the first summer I kind of started coaching golf. I went down to the range to watch him teach, and he had a whole lineup of lessons for the whole day. And I went to go watch him coach, and I was sitting on a bench, you know, probably about 15 yards back from the area that he was coaching. And I was planning to be a fly on the wall. I didn't want him to talk to me. I was there just to take notes and observe. And for the first 5 to 10 minutes, he worked with the student and kind of gave him a couple ideas to kind of play with. And then he came back and sat next to me on the bench and started talking to me. And I was like, Michael, you're teaching him. You don't have to talk to me. He's like, no, it's okay, it's okay. He's like, I just gave him a couple ideas that I wanted him to play with. And I want him to actually just kind of experiment with it for a while. And he's like, do you know how many younger coaches right now would still be talking this guy's ear off right now? And that's what I've noticed the most when I've observed a lot of my mentors growing up in the golf business and the golf teaching business, is that there's a lot of times younger and more inexperienced coaches tend to just talk too much. And I still struggle with this too, and I even kind of go into a lesson and try to count how many balls could a student hit before I actually start talking. And sometimes it's difficult because we're in the service industry, we're a customer service industry. We want to help people, especially when they're down and they're hitting bad shots, and we want to jump in and say, oh, it's okay, you almost got it there. But he said that he turned to me during this conversation and he said, Justin, do you know what the word play stands for? Play. I didn't know it stood for anything. I thought it was just a word. He said, no, it stands for something. He said it stands for powerful learning about yourself. Powerful learning about yourself. This student would have to be one of the most brilliant students in the world for me to be able to give him feedback on something that I want, or a new idea that I wanted him to try, and for him to be able to just nail it on the first swing right afterwards. Just because he missed it doesn't mean that I gave him the wrong information. It's just because he hasn't had enough time to play with the idea. And I thought that was such a great lesson that I learned from him earlier on in my career, that you have to give the student an opportunity to play with the idea that you give them, because most of the time you're trying to push them into a different direction. So, one funny story that I sometimes do when somebody says, I don't know if any of you have ever had a lesson with somebody and they say, something's wrong with my 7-iron. I think the weighting's off, I just can't hit my 7-iron. I said, really? I said, what about your 8-iron? 8-iron's perfect. 9-iron? Perfect. 7-iron? something's wrong with the weighting. Maybe it needs a new grip. I don't know what it is. We have to figure this thing out. I said, okay, great. Let's take a look at it. So I take out the 3 clubs. I got the 3 clubs in my hand. I said, here, hit the 9-iron for me. So I hand him the 9-iron. Boom, 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 boom. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I said, wow, that's great. I said, yeah, it's an iron. And an iron, perfect. Great, okay. What about the 8-iron? 8-iron's perfect. I said, here, the 8-iron. And the 8-iron. It's like bang, 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 bang. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I said, why is that so good? He said, because it's my 8-iron. I said, is it? I hand him the 7-iron with him thinking it's the 8-iron. And it happens all the time. I probably have done this probably 100 times. And then they just go like, so the moment that they're swinging thinking it's an 8-iron, and it's their 7-iron, they all of a sudden start to hit it pretty well. So if you ever come across somebody like that, and I'm sure you will, I think it's a funny trick, and it's a good laugh, and it's a good thing to do in a private one-on-one lesson. All right, group coaching. Group coaching is my last pillar that I want to talk about. This is something that I've gotten into, especially in the last 4 to 5 years. As I polled the room earlier, it sounds like the majority of us do the one-on-one lessons. The great thing, there's 2 big benefits from when it comes to group coaching. The first one is that you can coach more people in a day by doing group coaching. More people can benefit from your services. And since I'm at a private club, I think the more of my membership that gets to spend time with me and hopefully like what I'm doing, it elongates my career at that club. So group coaching allows you to coach more people in a day. If you're doing 8 hours in a day and you're only doing one-on-one lessons, you can only touch 8 people that day. If you're doing group coaching, obviously you can touch a lot more. Cynically, group coaching is great financially for a golf professional. I got first introduced into group coaching, which exponentially increased my revenue and income that I made each year when I got introduced to Operation 36. Derek Cooper, who's in the room, is a Op 36 master coach and just unbelievable at what he does. And it's a fantastic program. How many here have heard of Operation 36? How many here run an Operation 36 program? Fewer hands. So, I cannot give you a bigger tip in the entire world is to start an Operation 36 program. Once again, you can touch more people, but also you make a lot more money. When I did the math in one of my summers, 50% of my income came from Operation 36, and it only took up 25% of my time. So I was almost making double the amount of hourly rate just doing Operation 36. The other thing that I love about Operation 36 is that it gives you a way to teach the beginner golfer. Before Operation 36, what I used to do is somebody would sign up for me and they'd say, hey, I want to learn how to play golf. I say, great, sign up for a series of 5 with me. And all we did was just did 5 lessons on the driving range. I would tee them all up because they're a beginner golfer. Most of the time we didn't get past a pitching wedge. We did full swing the entire time. And I just hoped and prayed that I could get the ball up in the air for this person the majority of the time. At the end of the five lessons, they never went out on the golf course and never really even learned the concept of what the game of golf was. In Operation 36, you get them to sign up for a semester of classes. So I'm going into my November-December semester, and it's because of the holidays, it's only 5 weeks, but typically it's an 8-week semester, and they actually sign up for all 8 weeks at a time. That's one thing that I learned from Operation 36 is you get them to sign up for all of them at the same time. You don't let them come to clinic a la carte, because then they don't really commit to the program. You really can't make a difference with them because they're not coming frequently or consistently enough. So Operation 36 allowed me to get them to be able to be in a consistent class with me. So it's 8 weeks of classes. You do a class with them every single week. And then every other week, you actually go out on the golf course with them. And they actually play 9 holes from first starting from 25 yards. They play from 25 yards. If they shoot 36 or better, hence Operation 36, they get to move back to 50 yards. If they play from 50 yards and shoot 36 or better, they get to move back to 100 yards. If they shoot 100, and so on. 100 yards to 150 to 200, and then they finally start on the first tee box, the most closest tee box, and then they move their way back that way. But this is also a way for you to reach a market of your student base that you may have not been able to reach before. A lot of my members at my club, their wives all of a sudden started coaching. And one of the husbands, came up to me kiddingly and was complaining because now his wife wanted to go on all of his golf trips with him. So, but now his wife is a golfer, now she's using the club. It's also a benefit to the club, because now you're bringing these people that were never golfers before. They now need to buy golf clubs. They have to buy golf clothes. That's helping the merchandise in the golf shop. They're buying more food at the club, because after their 9-hole event, they stop at the bar and they kind of hang out there and eat and drink. So it's a program that I think can only help your club, and it's something that could help your own pocket as well, and also help you reach a group of students that you may not have been able to reach before. The way that I conduct my classes is typically that I set them up into 3 different stations, and I cover the same 3 topics pretty much every single week. And I kind of treat it kind of like an Orange Theory class. I don't know if any of you have ever done Orange Theory Fitness before, but every time you go into Orange Theory Fitness, there's 3 stations you go to every single time. There's the treadmills where you run on the treads, there's the rowers where you row, and then there's the weight floor. But every time you go in, you go to those same 3 stations, but you do different exercises each time. That's how I coordinate my short game classes. I do 8 classes within a semester, but I still set up the same 3 stations every single time, but I do a different drill each time. I introduce a different putting drill each time. I introduce a different chipping or pitching drill each time. I introduce a different bunker drill each time. And each time that they come through, we're getting them better and better at those particular classes, skills. After they've done the short game class for a while, some of the students have said, hey, I've done this for a couple of classes now. I've graduated up to 120 minutes. I graduated up to about, I graduated up to 100 yards, 150 yards. We don't really cover that much full swing in the class. So I opened up like a level 2 class, and I've had some success with that by getting people to kind of graduate from my short game class. Once they've gotten through 25, 50, and maybe 100 yards, I graduate them into my full swing class, and that's where we just do a different full swing exercise every single week. We cover irons, we cover hybrids, we cover fairways, we cover driver. But it's a way for you to then have a little bit of a graduation process in the Operation 36 program. Another program that I just recently came across, which has been maybe my most profitable one, but also one that is really, really attractive to most student bases, is ripstick clinics. It's very similar to the stack system or the speed stick system, but the ripstick is basically one stick that has 3 weights in it. And I like it a little bit better than the super speed sticks, because it's one stick that you can change the weighting on instead of having 3 different sticks. But basically I set up a 4-week class, and I'm going to go put them through a bunch of speed drills to get them to swing faster. And included with the price of the program is these 4 classes, and then they also get their own ripstick, and they also get their own swing radar. And basically what we do is I think I priced it this last time at $550, but they get the ripstick, they get the speed radar, and then they go through 4 different classes with me through the whole month. And it's a way for them to increase speed. I actually bring out an A-frame on the range, and I kind of put everyone's name on it. I put down their base speed, and each week after we do the exercises, I write down their new speed. What's your new fastest speed that you're able to get your swing speed up to? And at the end of the class, I just ran it for the 2nd time in September. Every single person in my class gains anywhere between 5 and some of the guys got up to 30 miles an hour faster. But I'm really convinced that they were just swinging extremely slow at the beginning and just never experimented with swinging faster. But it was such great feedback, because what I loved about this program is that it's measurable. You're able to measure whether they are getting better or not. It's an attractive topic. Everybody wants to be able to hit the ball farther. and it's a big money maker. I had 20 people sign up for it. I think I did the math, and I was, maybe making $500 or $600 an hour doing that class. So doing group clinics like that brings a great opportunity to your membership or your student base. Advanced junior clinics. The way that I do my junior clinics with my Op36 program is mainly, it's very kind of elementary. I have a lot of kids that are just trying to get into the game. And through Operation 36 and also my certification through the US Kids Golf, I've learned that utilizing games is really a really great way to engage the kids and get them to be engaged with what we do. So I usually break them up into 3 different stations. I do kind of one little technique station, but we only do that for about 15 minutes, where we kind of teach them about their grip or teach them about their stance or anything like that. But then the second station is always putting. The number one reason why most people don't pass in Operation 36 is because they don't putt very well. So I always have the kids do some type of a putting drill. And then finally, my third one is always some type of a game. But I have sometimes a lot of kids that graduate through that program, and they just graduate much faster than any of the other kids. And they're looking for more challenge and looking for more peers. So just this last season, and I'm doing it for the second season, I started an advanced junior clinic. And I also made it an invite-only clinic, meaning I didn't post any posters about it. I didn't email the membership about it or email my students about it. It was like an invite-only clinic, where once I saw somebody who I thought was good enough to be in this particular clinic, I allowed them to kind of be a part of this clinic. And this clinic, once again, I structure the same way. I do a November-December semester. I have them sign up for the entire semester of classes. They don't come a la carte. And then 50% of my classes, I go out on the golf course with them, because kids love to play golf. So they love to be out on the golf course. I do it later in the afternoon after school. Usually the first tee is open by then, and we just go out and we play, and I do some on-course instruction with them. And then the other 50% of the time I have them on the range. But on the range we're doing more, I guess, serious drills, more like drills that you would give to a college player, or not so much trying to play pizza place, which is an Op36 game where you're trying to hit the ball in the oven, trying to box your pizza and then deliver your pizza. That's more fun games for like the kids that are just getting into it. I was giving them more measurable drills that that you'd see a tour player do or something like that. But advanced junior clinics, great group clinic idea that I've had some really great success with. I want to end my presentation here with one last story. I taught at the La Quinta Resort and Club, and another teacher at the La Quinta Resort and Club that I learned from was a guy named Denny Gray, and he used to say that you have to be an infotainer as a golf instructor. You're trying to give good information, but in entertaining ways. And one problem that I've seen from that many people suffer from is first tee jitters. First tee jitters, being nervous on the first tee. And this story comes from Bobby Cole, who, like I said, I worked with at Doral, Miami, Florida, and he was a South African player. And I always used to hear him tell this story. But when he told the story, it was much better because he has a South African accent, and everything he says sounds just super brilliant every single time that he talks. But this is basically his story. In 1966, at the age of 18, he was able to win the British Amateur at the age of 18. Very, very young age at the time. I think maybe the youngest ever. And he was invited to play in the Masters that same year. Because he was so young and one of the youngest ever to play in the Masters, and for a while he was the youngest ever to make the cut of the Masters, they invited him to play with Sam Snead, who was the #1 player in the world at the time. So he's going up to the Masters first tee, surrounded, because when the #1 player in the world's teeing off, it's surrounded by people, like 6 rows of people wanting to see the #1 player in the world tee off. So Bobby Cole goes up there and he introduces himself to Sam Snead and says, "Hello, Mr. Snead, I'm Bobby Cole. I'll be playing with you today." He says, "I want you to watch me today, kid, because you're going to learn a lot." "Okay, thank you." So Sam Snead gets up there, swings back, pipes it right down the middle. Now it's Bobby Cole's turn. Bobby Cole gets his ball in his tee. He's going up to tee up his ball. His hands shaking. He's so nervous, right? Finally gets the ball in the ground. puts the ball up onto the tee. And he says this every time he tells the story. He says he's so nervous that if he accidentally knocks it off the tee, he's going to have his caddy come and pick it back up because like his legs are just like in cement. He's just so incredibly nervous. So now all these thoughts start going through his head. Don't slice it to the right into the scoreboard. Don't hook it left into the fairway. Don't hit a person. Don't top the ball. You're a professional golfer now. All these horrible thoughts going through his head. But right before he's about to take the club back, he asks himself a very important question. And he asks himself, what's the best possible outcome of this situation? And when he thinks about it, he says, well, out-driving Sam Snead would probably be the best possible outcome. And because that the thought was the last thing that went through his head right before he swung, he swings back, swings through, ball sails right down the middle of the fairway, goes past Sam Snead. Sam Snead, though, he teed off first, so he walks off the tee first. He's headed up the fairway way ahead of Bobby Cole. And he walks up the fairway, walks past the first ball, just assuming he's the second ball. Goes up to that second ball and is just waiting there for his caddy to catch up. His caddy checks the first ball. He says, hey, Sam, you're back here. He's like, what? Starts stomping his feet, starts walking back towards this ball. And at the time, he was sponsored by Wilson. So he mumbles under his breath, and Bobby Cole could hear him. He said, these darn Wilson balls, they don't go anywhere. So Bobby Cole heard it. And he said, well, Mr. Snead, would you like to borrow a Titleist? So I kind of gave him back to him a little bit there, but I thought it was a fantastic story, and stories like that, if you can share with your students, I think makes you a little bit more of an infotainer. But I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you all today, and hopefully you got something out of it, and that's all we got for you.
I do have a question. The Operation 36, does your club have to join some kind of program?
Yeah. So
is that through Golf Genius or?
Yeah, Op 36 and Golf Genius are now partnered together now. There is a monthly fee for the Operation 36 program. I built it into my fee structure. So basically, everybody who joins the program, I charge them an annual $50 fee. That's just a registration fee. That goes into like a separate account so that when it comes up time to pay, I think it's like $2,400 a month. Sorry, not a month. $2,400 a year. So if you get, I think I did the math, if you get 48 to 50 people to sign up through your entire year, that $50 goes towards paying for it. I've actually had problems with having too much money in there. I now use it for like education expenses and stuff like that. So, but that's how I pay for it. They pay the tuition to be a part of the class, but then I have a registration fee of $50, and that goes into a separate account, and I use that money to pay for it every year. And like I said, it's about $2,400 or so.
Hey, just a thought.
Yeah.
Because I do my Operation 36. I've been doing it for 5 years.
Yeah.
I used to do the same thing, registration fee. But now I just charge $5 extra on every semester entry.
Oh.
And that $5 goes back in, and I'm like you, it's too much at the end, but again, it pays for that $2,400 or whatever.
Oh, I like that.
So they don't know that they're paying registration fee, I just added it on.
I like that a lot.
So now parents are going, okay, I'm good with that.
I love that.
So I'm gonna have to ask for it.
That's a great idea.
So just
No, I love that idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Cool. Yeah.
What's your perfect day?
Say again?
What is your ideal teaching day? How many lessons did you give? What time do you start? Do you like an evening teacher? You're a morning guy? I mean, what is your perfect day?
To be honest, when I first got into the business, I really envied the people that had full books and were busy
What's a
all
full
the
book?
time.
8 days? 8 hours?
Yeah, and like slam packed, 8 to 5.
Yeah.
And working every single day. I've now had quite a few years of that, and I don't love it anymore. So like my ideal day would be to be able to teach less hours, and that's why I'm getting more into the group coaching, which is where I can touch more people and maybe spend, I have a younger family now, I have a 2-year-old at home, another one on the way, so, you know, quality time at home has become a little bit more important to me. I'm sure everyone saw the Golf Digest article that came out about a year and a half ago that I think golf pros more than anything struggle with work-life balance more than anybody, you know, and I guess my ideal day is to be able to work enough to where I can provide for my family, but then also be able to have that time with my family. I do love group instruction though, way more than one-on-one lessons. I think there's just a better energy in there. So my perfect day is the days that I have a lot of group instruction on those days. It's great positive energy, having a lot of people there that you can coach all at the same time. I still like my one-on-one lessons for sure, and it's been a part of my career for a long time, but that's a great question. Thanks for asking.
Have you ever had a lesson that you decided to give the person their money back because it wasn't working? My mentor, he said he coached an Olympic swimmer once, and he just could not get to them, and he was in that similar situation. So just wanted to see if you've ever had a situation like that.
Right, and give money back to a person. I mean, I have not succeeded at every lesson that I've ever given. You know, I don't know if I've ever given money back. I've given an opportunity for the person to come back again for free and give it another shot. If it still doesn't work, maybe I do suggest going another route or anything like that. But at least that way they got 50% discount on my time. No, I haven't thought about giving money back. I have given time though. I've given free time to make up for a lesson that I didn't think went as well as I thought it could have gone. So, cool. Well, thank you again, everybody. Thank you.